right, and welcome to That's Enough Out of You podcast with Bill and not Sean. Today we have Greg. Greg Schroder is my friend and my colleague from the day job. How you doing, Greg?
Hello, happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So this is kind of a new thing that we're going to be doing with the show. We're going to do some midweek shows, a little bit different topics than what we usually do. Today we're going to be talking hockey, which is one of my favorite things to do. And Greg, I know it's one of your favorite things to do as well.
Heck yeah. And I'm just wondering right now if I can call you Billy Raids from now on. That's what's in my head right now.
Sure, absolutely. That Sean actually made that up. That's the nickname he gave me. So
I love it.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, so we're talking hockey, we're talking puck, we're talking frozen ponds and sticks and missing teeth, right?
It's funny you say that. The frozen ponds.
Yeah,
I've got a puck from my grandpa when they used to play on the frozen ponds up in South Dakota, and he carved his name into it.
Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah. And this thing is all beat up and it's always on my desk, and too bad it skipped a generation with my dad, but yeah, it's hockey's been in the family.
Well, you grew up in that area, right?
Yeah, South Dakota.
Yeah. So
yeah, hockey wasn't that big of a deal up there actually, because Minnesota is too far away. But yeah, I heard about that all the time. People playing, pond hockey. It was just a normal thing.
You said it wasn't a big deal, or it was a big deal?
Well, it's weird because when my grandpa was young, it was a really, really big deal. And they had like their own little leagues, and they would play different teams, just kind of throwing it together in the backyard, pickup kind of stuff. But then like my dad's generation, it just wasn't a big deal at all. And even in mine growing up, it just never happened. It was never a thing. You just didn't hear about it. But it was certainly a thing back in my grandpa's youth. It's crazy.
That's interesting. I always thought hockey was king up there. And it's funny because guy that I work with now, Justin, he lives in South Dakota, and I'm sure you guys have talked about that. But and I asked him, I said, "Are you into hockey?" He said, "No." He said, "I'm into football and baseball." And I know the Fighting Sioux are big up there. That's North Dakota, right? Fighting Sioux.
Right.
I think they changed their nickname, but
North Dakota, you see so many names coming to the NHL from the North Dakota league. There's something about it up there. I think it's just the close proximity to the, God's chosen land up there. So Canada,
right? Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's a big reason why, it's so Minnesota, such a big hockey region, and New England as well. When I lived outside of Boston for a little while, and hockey was huge there. But my dad was never into hockey. My dad was always big into baseball, football, and basketball, and he never really watched hockey. So growing up, I didn't really get into it actually until we moved to this area, to Northeast Pennsylvania, and my neighbor, kid who was across the street from me, from my house, was huge Flyers fan. And that was his exactly. And that was his big sport. So he thought he was Ron Hextall. He had a Hextall jersey, and he loved to play goalie, and he loved to fight. And when we would play street hockey, he would always try to get into fights with the teams that we were playing against, or anybody we were playing against.
That's funny.
But that's how I got into hockey, because he was a big Flyers fan, and I liked all the New York teams. And the Rangers were the only team that I could watch on TV, because they were occasionally on Channel 9, which was like a syndicated New York station. And so the Rangers, I mean, that was really the only New York team that was I was even able to see. So of course I became a Ranger fan. But it was just so different because hockey was not really a national, like it wasn't on national TV at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember even up until like the early 90s when the Penguins were in the Stanley Cup final, both years, 91 and 92, you couldn't watch that series. I think it was on Sports Channel, but I didn't have Sports Channel. Nobody I knew had Sports Channel. So I was trying to listen to the Stanley Cup finals on the radio. And I think I got like a channel from Chicago that you could hear like every 3 seconds it would come in and then fade out.
Yeah, hockey chased me. I'm the same way. So growing up where hockey wasn't really top of mind, so we moved from the Dakotas to Colorado, but we moved in 97, early 97. So perfect timing when the Nordiques moved and became the Avs. It was fresh. And I mean, I was barely in the state and I started seeing all these bumper stickers that said, Red Wings suck, Red Wings suck. Holy cow, what kind of culture is this? And I was a really good friend of mine. We're still friends, very close today. Really kind of my brother, I refer to him as. And he he moved to Denver about the same time, which was great, from New Mexico. And he said, we got to go to Avs game. So they were still at McNichols Arena and the Avs were playing the Hurricanes. Right. And holy cow, I was immediately hooked. I mean, just the energy, the excitement, the pace. I was just, it was instant love, and couldn't get enough of it. And, just dove into, I mean, that was a golden, I mean, that team was amazing. I got to see Patrick Waugh my first game and Adam Foote and Forsberg and, God almighty, it was amazing. Of course, our wives were just chit chatting. I'm like, honey, you don't even realize back then what you were missing out on.
Right. And that team, I always say there were two teams that got better because of the Lindros trade.
Mm-hmm.
The Avs and the Rangers were both won Stanley Cups because Lindros got traded to the Flyers.
Yep.
Quebec got all those great players, got tons of draft picks. They got Forsberg, I think, was part of that deal, right? He was,
I believe he was a Flyer. Yeah, he was.
I think he was a Flyer prospect, and they got him in that deal, and they got a ton of draft picks that they turned into great players. And of course, the Rangers, who were trying to trade for Lindros, they were going to give away half their roster for Lindros, ended up not getting him. And I think we're better off because of it and ended up winning the cup in 94.
Yeah. I don't know.
And then the next year, the Avs won.
I was thinking about, with the trade deadline for the NHL, I really love that. And, all sports have different ways of doing trades. And, I'm not, I'm a football fan, definitely college, probably a little bit more than NFL, but love the sport and kind of I'm wishy-washy on baseball, but I don't know. It's just my opinion, but I feel like the propensity of a trade making a massive difference in a sport. I don't know. Maybe it's because I follow hockey more, but I feel like it happens more in the game of hockey. And it doesn't matter, sometimes we'll see like those top picks fizzle out. We'll see, free agency pick change the world, and it's just or you're thankful for the guy you didn't get. Like, dodged a bullet there. So, I mean, I don't know what you think, Bill, but I just, I don't know. I just see more evidence, I feel like, of trades making a bigger deal in hockey.
Definitely. I think when you look at teams that have won the Stanley Cup in recent years, there's usually a late season, trade deadline acquisition that like puts them over the top. That's almost always the case.
Yeah.
And, it's usually it's usually a guy. It's not always a superstar either. Sometimes it's just like just a role player, somebody who can come in and maybe add some grit or some toughness to a line,
Mm-hmm.
where there's a scorer that kind of takes a beating, or sometimes it's a defenseman that will plug a hole or something. But yeah, absolutely. I think that probably more than any other sport, it's definitely, it impacts the team and the playoffs a lot more. And I mean, you look at football. I mean, football, most people don't even know there's a trade deadline, unless you're really into fantasy football and all that kind of stuff. And usually it's not a very impactful trade. I think baseball is probably the most high profile trade deadline, but it's a lot earlier in the season than it is with hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think baseball's trade deadline is, what is it, end of June or end of July? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But but hockey's trade deadline is literally like a month before the playoffs start.
Yeah. Yeah.
6 weeks, right? 6 weeks to a month before the playoffs. And I think with that being the case, it kind of gives that new player just enough time to get acclimated, to learn the system, and by the time the playoffs start, then it's like, all right, here we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish the Penguins would have it. All right, here we go one, because we've struck out a while. But excited for your Rangers with Tarasenko. That I think that's a really good case. And we've just had some duds. I mean, you see it, like you said. Sometimes it's a locker room guy. Sometimes it's that enforcer. So they've got a different role. It doesn't mean like, hey, this guy is gonna get us to win the cup, but he's a piece of the whole puzzle.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder to make trades today because of the salary cap. I think years ago, you look at some of the late season acquisitions, I'm talking obviously pre-salary cap in the 90s or whatever. You look at some of those acquisitions, and like I think about the Rangers in 94. They made so many deals at the deadline, and they picked up they picked up Glenn Anderson. They picked up a couple of guys from Matteau. Stefan Matteau was one of the guys that they picked up at the deadline, and they changed a good bit of their team. And you really wouldn't be able to do as much this now simply because there's so many things that you have to look at with the salary cap. I mean, salaries have to match. You have to, so many of these teams, especially the good teams, are so close to the cap, if not right at it. It's really tough to make those kind of deals work.
I like that though. I mean, like I said, I really started following hockey, just after that 97, but I studied the sport a lot. I'm just a geek about it. Love it. And the salary cap era, I don't know. I tend to, when I do like research for stats and things like that, I'm involved in fantasy hockey. I've been a commissioner in our league for almost as long. I don't know. It's been a long time, but I love the sport that much is my point. But to look at how things were statistically and how the game was played, just all in before the salary cap. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's a good thing. They keep continuing to, change the game, and I think, for the most part, it's good. It's in a good direction. I know player safety is a big part of it. Ever since what was it, like 2010-11 season, somewhere in there, when player safety came on, thanks to the good old Penguin Matt Cook. He had a big, he had a big part with that whole thing with that hit on what was it, Savard. But I think, heck, even that's good. The NFL is doing the same thing, concussions, like targeting the head and things like that. But see, that's where I get into the whole NFL is different and not such a great way. Like I forgot what game it was. You can probably say which one it was. It was a playoff game where someone got nailed for a taunting penalty. Like, man, if they did taunting in NHL, let's be honest.
You'd have everybody in the box.
Yeah.
At some point during the
if
game.
You're going to do it,
taunting.
Call it chirping, please.
Right. Exactly. But you're right. The game has changed a lot. I think they've sort of legislated fighting, not totally out of the game, but it's definitely. I can't imagine what the statistic is. I'm sure fighting majors are down like, 200% or something from what they were back in the 80s and 90s. And I mean, I remember a time where it was unusual for a game to not have at least one fight. Usually they had one or two, sometimes three fights. Now it's like if a game has a fight, it's kind of unusual. You just don't see it happen that often. And I like the fact that it's still part of the game. I don't think that should go away. I think you can tell in a game when things are getting chippy, when things get really tense and guys are kind of going at each other and, sticks are coming up and after every whistle, there's a scrum either in front of the goalie or in the corners or whatever. There's got to be a fight at some point, and that's almost like the release valve, right? Then all of a sudden, everything, the sticks are tapping on the boards, and things kind of get back to normal because the fight kind of cleared all that stuff away.
What's even better is, I think the absolute best fight I ever saw was the Rangers. Forgot who they were playing, but you know which one I'm going to talk about. I know Mike Rupp had just got traded over there from the Penguins. No, that wasn't his first. Anyways, Rupp was on the team. And there was a carryover from the game before. And as soon as they dropped that puck, all 10 of them, goalies included, man, they were just at each other like, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love when stuff like that happens. Everybody just squared off right at the opening faceoff. That was fantastic.
That reminds me of your story you told me when one of the games you went to see the Rangers. You walked into the arena and you just yelled out loud, like, "This is my people."
Yeah.
And then what that guy said back to you.
I can't. What was it? I can't remember.
He's like, hell yeah, or something like that. Yes, you are in the right place.
Oh yeah. I've had a bunch of great experiences going to live games. I'm sure you have too. But every time I've gone to the Garden for a game, it's just been a great experience. I remember I think it was the first time. I can't remember if it was the first time I went or I don't know. It was one of the early games that I went to. I actually got interviewed outside the Garden. I was wearing a Rangers jersey, Rangers hat. No way to mistake me. And it was a local station. I don't even think it exists anymore. But they were just interviewing people outside the Garden, and I got interviewed for television. And I'm screaming. I'm going, "This is my first game," or whatever. I'm like screaming at the microphone. They were like, "Okay, buddy, we'll see. Enjoy the game."
Nice.
And then, I've been to a bunch of different arenas. So obviously the Garden. I went to see a game. I've been to a couple of games in Carolina when they were in. Where are they now? They're in Charlotte now, right? The Hurricanes, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
When they played in Raleigh for a little while, and I went to a couple of games there in Raleigh, and they were playing the Rangers, and I of course had my Rangers jersey on. And there were a bunch of Ranger fans, and we were just going, walking into the arena. We're let's go Rangers. We were just going crazy doing the Rangers chant walking in. That was fun. But I was in. I had family that lived in that area at that time when the Hurricanes made that run to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they won the Stanley Cup. They beat the Oilers. I forget what year that was. I think was it 2006, maybe. I think it was around that time. And we were in the mall in that area in Raleigh, and they were playing, I guess they were playing the Leafs in one of the series leading up to the finals. And these guys were in the mall, and they had they had this huge Canadian flag, and they were just parading around the mall with this Canadian flag, and they actually threw them out, and they were screaming as they were getting tossed out of the mall. That, you can't do this! You can't toss us out!
That's awesome. Yeah, our first when we moved here to Pennsylvania, man. Again, hockey. The hockey just followed us, man. We had my wife. She has her own business, and her very first client works for the Pirates, and he used to work for the Penguins, and so tons of connections. He's on the media side of it, so he knows everybody, and we quickly became friends, over hockey. He's a big hockey fan, and anyways, he said, well, let's go to the game. He said, I'll get tickets for you and your boys. Like, yeah, let's go. So and it was still at Mellon Arena, which I'm really thankful for. And he not only got us tickets, he got us tickets in the family section. So we're sitting right next to, at the time, Malkin's girlfriend, and family. Yeah. And they're just all around us, like he's saying, like, one seat down and two over, like, hey, that's, forgot whose family it was, but they had like jerseys, the kids had jerseys that said daddy on them and all this. And we were just like immersed in, an extra layer of cool right there. But that was a great time too, because we moved here in Pennsylvania, 2008. So that was the year they went to the Cup final, played Detroit and lost. And then, the year after, we played Detroit in the final again and won. But he kept hooking us up, man. Player section, hockey tickets for free. Parking was free, everything. And a few times he couldn't go and just sent us. And like, I was like, this is daggum awesome. And so we got to see some really great games right away there at Mellon. But yeah, I got to see some really cool moments too. A hat trick by Crosby one game. Yeah, I remember we went to a Leafs game, and it was one of Malkin's like career highlight shots. It was really interesting because it was kind of similar to Gordie Howe. Sorry, that's holy ground, but it was just a beautiful like cut across dive shot, got it in, and it was just killer, And actually, my buddy who got me into it way back in Colorado, he was traveling up here, and it was him and I that was at that game, but. A lot of great memories. My wife and I try to go to a playoff game every year. I take my daughter to a preseason game every year. And then, one of my sons is especially into hockey. He's in our fantasy league, and we always, fill up a few games during the season too. So it's an awesome time, man. Really is.
Oh, it's so much fun. And we have the Penguins farm team here in this area. And I try to go to at least 3 or 4 games a year. And in fact, at one point I was actually working for the team, doing statistics. I was doing time on ice, and still, even though you're working, it's still a fun atmosphere. And I've been taking my son lately to the games, and he loves it. He loves just to go to the games, and he's just a sponge. He soaks up everything, and he loves to learn about the game. So he's always asking me questions. Daddy, why did they blow the whistle there? What happened? What's icing? What's this? What's that? What does that mean? And it's fun to have him, to be able to teach him and kind of pass it down to him. He has such a good time. And they had a game. They do this every year, but the last game that we went to, they had what they call the teddy bear toss. And it's right around Christmas time, and you have to buy a new stuffed animal, and you bring it with you. And then the first goal that the Penguins score, everybody throws their teddy bear onto the ice. And the image of it, all of these teddy bears just going onto the ice at once. It's so cool. It's so fun to see it. And Jeremy was just like having so much fun because, obviously not everybody's going to reach the ice surface from where they are. So teddy bears were just like raining down on top of us. And Jeremy just kept picking them up and throwing them as far as he could. And he was just having a blast. He was having so much fun. But the funny thing was the Penguins scored a goal late in the second. That was their first goal of the game. And it was probably about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to go in the period. They ended up just stopping the period there. They sent them to the locker room so they could clean up, and then they resumed the third period when they came back out. And so he had questions about that. He's like, "Dad, does that mean that they're gonna have another intermission?" And I was like, "No."
Now Jeremy's a diehard Rangers fan and loves all the players you love, right?
Oh, stop.
He's a favorite player, Bill.
He doesn't even know any of the players yet. That's the funny thing. He picks all of the teams that I don't like just to annoy me. But if you ask it, like he's rooting for he doesn't even know the Eagles are playing in the Super Bowl tomorrow. But he's a big Eagles fan. And so, I'll say, Jared, you want to watch the Super Bowl? Not really.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my sons, I've got 3 sons and a daughter. One of my sons, not into hockey at all, but if I'm ever watching, he walked by, and if the Pens are losing, he's like, "Penguins suck." I'm like, "Shut up, get out of here!" I'm like,
just to annoy you, right? Just to annoy you.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was thinking, kind of their job.
The awesome story you told about the greats, the Gretzky Lemieux game that you were going to see.
So so I think this was 91. It was around the holidays in 1991, and my dad and I flew out to California to visit my grandmother who lived in Santa Monica. And I said, we were planning this trip, and I said to my dad, if the Kings are playing, do you want to, because he was starting to get into hockey because we lived together, and I was constantly watching hockey, and there was really no way for him to avoid it. So I said, if the Kings are playing, and that they were still playing at the old Forum, I said, do you want to go to a hockey game? So he said, all right, you find out, you get the tickets, and we'll go. So I looked at the schedule, and they were playing the Penguins. Now, Gretzky had already been hurt. I think that was the season he missed most of the season, if not all of it, because I think he tore his ACL or something like that. He had a season-ending knee injury. So I knew he wasn't going to be playing, but I thought, all right, well, at least we'll get to see Mario, we'll get to see Jágr, and the rest of the Kings team, and we'll still be pretty historic. So we get to the arena. We're pulling into the arena, and we're listening to the pregame on radio, and they're talking about how Mario Lemieux was being scratched because of his back, and that was, at that time, his back it would keep him out of numerous games. So I thought, oh, that's, I can't believe this. I go to a Kings Penguins game where 2 of the best players in the history of the game, maybe the 2 best, are both on the team, and neither one of them are playing. But Jágr played, and of course Jágr was amazing. And my dad had brought binoculars with him because my grandmother said, a lot of those games, even the Kings games, a lot of celebrities go. So he brought binoculars, and he's looking around the arena, see who he can find. And I think he saw a couple of celebrities, but the only one I remember that he saw was the guy. Remember the guy Ted McGinley? He was on Happy Days. He was on Married with Children. He replaced. Did you ever watch Married with Children? Was that one of the? Yeah,
the Al Bundy character or the kid?
So it was the guy who replaced Steve. Steve was the husband, was Marcy's husband. And then he left the show. You remember Marcy? She was the annoying neighbor.
Yeah. Just trying to picture who that is.
So, there's actually a category. There's a Ted McGinley category on that website, Jump the Shark. Do you know about that? You know about that website? they talk about when shows, when they start to decline, when they start to lose their, and it's called Jump the Shark, because in Happy Days, when Fonzie jumped over a shark on his motorcycle, everybody says that's when Happy Days started to decline. So there's a category called the Ted McGinley category, because he always comes into these shows towards the end of their run. Anyway, a long story to explain who this guy was, but that was the only guy that I remember my dad saw. But that was a lot of fun going to that game. And I forget who else. I think Luke Robitaille was on the Kings. I think Kelly Rudy was still their goaltender. And I'm trying to think of some of the other players. And McSorley, I think, was still on the Kings at that time.
Well, speaking of Yager, did you see the news where he surpassed Gretzky's total points, or
career totals? Career totals.
Part of me, I mean, I know it's professional hockey, but it's not NHL, so I don't know.
Right. Well, I think it's their career total. So I think they also counted Gretzky, because I think Gretzky played a year in the WHA?
Oh, really?
I think that if you look it up, I think that's what forced, not the merger. I don't think it was a merger, but the NHL purchased a lot of the WHA teams, or they just merged. I guess they just merged with the NHL. There were some teams that didn't survive.
Right.
But the Oilers were one of the teams that survived. The Oilers were brought into the NHL, and I think that was the reason why, because they were a WHA team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that I was thinking about earlier, just about how the league's changed. And think of, like I'd mentioned earlier, like the Nordiques to the Avalanche. I mean, there's been so many moves. Dallas Stars moving from, they were in Minnesota first, and then and then others like the Thrashers that didn't work. And I thought the same thing was going to happen to the Coyotes, but they doubled down. But I don't know if that's going to help. If the market's there for it, but
I don't think it is. I think they're ultimately going to have to move somewhere. But yeah, I mean, do you think about Hartford Whalers moving to Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
There've been a lot of those.
I heard Ottawa. Well, there's been, with expansion teams, there's been buzz and speculations that Toronto getting a second team, like Ottawa getting a second team, and but we heard the same kind of rumors when Vegas was being talked about in Seattle. And so I don't know, if you have any thoughts about what could be the next team, but
well, I think more than likely there'll be another team in Quebec. I think since the Nordiques since the Nordiques left, they've been dying to get a team back. And I think at some point, Quebec City, they'll get another team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether it'll be a team moving there or expansion or whatever, but that seems probably the most likely. If Canada's going to get another team, it would seem to me it'd be Quebec City.
That would be great.
Yeah, I don't think another team in Toronto would work. What's that?
We'd have to change how we say it, though. It's a Quebec, right? Quebec, like they say. Yeah. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. I think that would make the most sense.
Yeah, I don't think another team would survive in Toronto. It's just, I mean, not that that's not a hockey market, but you live in Toronto, you're a Leaf fan. I'm sorry, that's
right.
You're a Leaf fan. I can't see people converting to another team in Toronto.
It'd be a hockey civil war.
Yeah, exactly.
Fodder for another show, Bill.
Yeah, but the other thing that I wanted to talk about is how hockey's become really this year-round sport now. It's not just during the season. Once the season ends, we've got the award show, then we've got the draft, and then we've got free agency.
Mm-hmm.
And then usually before the season starts, there are prospect tournaments, there's,
Mhm.
training camp. I mean, there's really only like 6 weeks, 8 weeks maybe, where there's almost no or very little hockey news.
Mhm.
And it's just, it's like a dream now for if you're a hockey fan.
Oh, I love it. And then another example of hockey chasing us, I feel like, is when they moved the Penguins practice up to, Cranberry, the Lemieux Center, so
Yeah.
that was fantastic. And so we've, ever since they've opened, every year we go to the practice, the preseason practice. And I mean, that you get to see the team right away, first day, and all this, and their
Yeah.
scrums, and get to watch like how they're switching the lines around. And that is just so exciting for me, because you see players the first time and like, oh my gosh, they look fantastic. Like there's I remember when Jamie Alexiak first came on practice, a big old defenseman, and just watching him play, like there's no way this guy doesn't make the team. And sure enough, and then I think he's still playing down at Dallas, and he's doing a great job. The Pens traded him, but you just see these up and comers, and it's just so neat. And then also you got all the media guys there, and bring the family, and you get some autographs. It's pretty easy. The fans will wait out by the back of the practice arena, and the players are great about it. So yeah, you're right. The buzz starts early. And is the World Juniors schedule? I mean, does that overlap entirely with NHL, or is there? I'm not sure. Like when.
So the World Juniors is usually, and I say usually because it was the one year, the COVID year, it was canceled, and then it was moved to, I think, late summer. But it typically starts right around Christmas, and then ends right after the New Year. So that's usually when World Juniors is.
Okay.
And that's always my favorite tournament. I think, to me, that's more exciting than like the Final Four. I pay more attention to the World Juniors than I do to college basketball.
Right.
It's because it's cool. Hockey's one of the very few sports where players get drafted, but they can still go to college, or they still play with their junior team, or they still play on an international team. And so you get to see these guys sort of develop, and seeing a player or two players in that tournament that your team has drafted, it really creates interest in the tournament, because you're rooting for, you may be rooting for Finland because, the Rangers or the Penguins have a prospect on that team. You should be rooting for Team USA, but hey, they don't have any Ranger players on Team USA.
No, you're right. Well, and it's also fun to see them. I mean, this is kind of a little bit of a segue when you talk about like Team Finland. I mean, heck, I love like the Olympics is really fun, to see different players playing in their home countries and with other players, and well, heck, even like the All-Star game, I love that, to see, like even this last year, last week or so, Crosby and Ovechkin playing on the same line together, and just the chemistry they had, and it's just so fun to see your favorite players in different teams, whether it's their country team or an all-star situation. It adds layers of excitement, that it just makes you love the sport, and even like I mentioned, like fantasy hockey, the reason I love that, it's not anything other than just learning more and more about the league and the players. And I joke with my wife, she'll see me watching like any game, really. And why are you watching them? I'm like, I just love the hockey game, and I'll joke with her. I said, just ask any player here that's on the ice on the screen here what their first name is. I'll tell you. It's like, it's that bad or good.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I just love it. And I always tried when I was like in high school, I always tried to play pond hockey. And I remember a conversation I had once with this guy who I was friends with, who was a big football fan, and I actually ended up converting him to a hockey fan. Not converting, but he liked hockey as well, even though football was still his number one sport. But I remember one time he said to me, he said, I bet you, and he actually played college football. He played like Division III college football. And he said, I bet you I could be on a hockey team. He said, I could probably, maybe I'd be like the last guy on the team, but I could play hockey. I'm sure I could pick it up. I looked at him, I said, listen, these guys learn how to skate before they learn how to walk.
Yeah.
Okay. Even the worst guy on the worst team will skate circles around you. You won't even know what hits you.
Exactly.
I said, there is no chance, if you haven't been skating since you were 5 years old, there is no chance you're going to make a hockey team ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. You see all these like memes and things like that online about the comparison of football and hockey. It's a fun one, but just statistically, just the athleticism, I think the stat I saw was there was around 16 minutes of actual game time play in an NFL game.
Yeah, I saw that.
Whereas NHL is quite different. And, sports are great and they're different for a reason, and I'm not trashing on football, but I think that's another reason why I love the game of hockey is just the skill. And God, like these younger, the game is changing so much. I mean, just from when I started, and you've been following it your whole life, but it's changing so much, the speed of it. And, it used to be like like a West Coast, East Coast thing, or Pacific, is different than Atlantic. But then it all caught up and it's faster. The landscape keeps changing. The prospects get crazier. I mean, I haven't committed his name to memory, but you probably do. This young kid that's coming in, going to be first draft pick. There you go. Yeah. Holy freak. His numbers are
amazing.
Stupid. Yeah.
He's amazing. And he really is. If you were going to say there's going to be another Gretzky, and I don't see it ever happening. I don't think we're ever going to see anybody score, because the game is so different today. There's just no chance a guy is going to score that much. But if there was ever a kid who could do it, it's this kid, Connor Bedard. I watched him in the World Juniors. I've seen other games that, from his junior team. And he is the real deal. This kid is amazing. And I'm telling you, there was a game, I think last night, the Blackhawks played the Coyotes. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you want to win this game? Because if you I was saying it was the Bedard Bowl, because those are two teams at the bottom of the league. I would just say, listen, I'm trading all my good players. I'm going to just, do whatever we have to do. I mean, this is the type of player you tank for. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They blow the whistle to start the game and the players just stand there looking at each other. I'm not moving. Are you moving? No, the closest buzz I can think of just in recent years is, and it's not really even a fair comparison, is Austin Matthews. But, that was in my mind. I mean, Jack Eichel, and what's the defenseman that Buffalo had? Buffalo got a few of them. The defenseman that Buffalo got, I can see his face right now.
Dahlin?
Dahlin, Rasmus Dahlin. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so, there's some players on that, that spectrum of excitement for a new guy coming in. But yeah, it's nothing like this Bedard guy. Like, what the heck? I can't wait. Can't wait.
The last time that there was this much hype around somebody coming into the league was Crosby, and we had to wait a year, right? Wasn't that was the year that the season was canceled?
Yeah, they canceled it.
It would have been Crosby's rookie year, right? Yeah. That's
crazy. Yeah, It's exciting, and for so many different reasons. I mean, that's why it's just so easy to talk about it, to get hooked into it, and
Yeah.
it's exciting to go. People don't, like you go to the game because of that, and it's you're high-fiving everybody around you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I have to tell this story because it's just so funny. I just thought of it. I'm glad I thought of it.
Yeah.
I was of course, if you're in the metro, you just don't like the Flyers, right? I mean, that's why you and I can talk to each other. But
We have a common enemy.
yeah. But my wife and I went to a playoff game. It was first round. We were playing the Flyers. This was, I don't know, like 3-4 years, maybe it's more than that. I think my oldest son was in high school, so it's probably a little bit longer. But anyways, we were at the game, and and the Penguins score, and I'm like all excited, and I'm doing the like when you do that motion of like suck it, like when you take your hands and you just like hey, like you like hitting your hands against your hips, like it wasn't for anything profane, but I was like suck it, and it was my son and I and my wife, that's who it was. And like a minute later, a really close friend of my son's, he texted him. He said, "Are you at the game?" And he said, "Yeah, we are." He's like, "Oh yeah, I am." And he said, I think I just saw your dad do the suck it motion." Like,
that's great.
Proud dad moment right there.
Oh, I'm sure that's exactly what you want the world to see, right?
Right? That's my legacy. That's awesome. Well, keep taking Jeremy, man. Maybe he'll convert someday to the Rangers. Shouldn't be hard. They're gonna do well.
I'm not getting my hopes up, but we'll see. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, this has been great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk hockey with me. I know it's not a hard thing to do, right? It's
not at all.
for either of us. This has been fun.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and have you. We'll do this again for sure. We'll
definitely.
I'm sure there'll be a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for the invite. It's an honor. Appreciate it.
Of course.
And that's enough out of you, right?
That's it. That's enough out of you. All right, man. Take care.
Take care.
All right.
All right.